Hi, I'm Kathy from Eclectic Images and thank you for joining me. Today's card is also going to feature Shadow, which is one of our newer stamps that I've been showcasing in with a couple of different technique videos. This is going to be techniques with shadow, but also techniques with creating a background frame for him. So two quite different looks in the same card. So our stamps is quite limited, it's just shadow. But then we're also using the Couture Creation, one of the new Couture Creations 3D embossing folders. Now 3D embossing folders are wonderful because they give you so much texture to play with. And this one is flowers around with an open frame in the middle, which just leaves it just begging to put something like shadow or something in the center of it. Our inks, again, a limited palette. We've just got two of the Versamagics, Wheat and Sahara Sand. Then also going to be using some of the Dorland Wax Medium with a couple of our BeeArty shimmer dusts. And I've got Dusty Pink and Espresso there, so a pink and a brown. Okay, so let's have a play. So I've already run the card through the embossing folder. I find on mine, which is a big shot, I find that I take out one of the cover plates and then it will run through fine. Because the 3D folders are a lot thicker than your standard embossing folders, you might find you need to play around with how many plates and things you have in your machine to be able to get them through, with both getting enough plates to get the raised effect, but not so much that it tears through the paper or damages your machine. Okay, I'm going to pop this into our stamping platform because we're going to stamp shadow a couple of times to build up some colour. So I'll just pop some magnets around the edge there, position shadow where we would like him to be. So I'll ink him first with the wheat, then we're going to add some of the Sahara sand around the edge. So chalk pads and a solid stamp means that we need to do a little bit of inking. You can go a small amount of ink and get a very soft look, or you can get full coverage depending on how much ink you put on. Now wheat is a very soft colour. Just going to ink him up again and give a bit of a push again. I do find often with the solid stamps you've got to ink a couple of times to get a really good coverage. There we go. Now I'll get the Sahara sand and we'll just add this around the edges. So by having the ink pad on a tilt, the ink will naturally be shading itself on the card, we hope. I'm hoping to not get any harsh edges. So we cross our fingers, just run the Barren tool over a couple of times just to make sure the ink all releases. And that's really cool on that side, but this side I need a little bit more. You see how it just darkens off gradually? So this side we need to put a little bit more on, so I'm not going to tip the ink pad up as much. I'll let it lay down a bit more. And that'll get a bit more ink coming on. Excellent. So just shadowed the shadow. Okay, let's just move the stamp press to one side, and I'm going to give this a little bit of a heat just to dry it. So it doesn't need to be heat set, but I just want to speed up the drying. Okay, we're now going to go back to our wheat ink pad and do some shading, first with a brush, then with some direct to paper techniques. So I'm using one of the Future number 10 brushes, dip it into the ink, and we're going to shade around the card, bringing it in quite close to shadow. Now there's a lot more going to happen in the flower area. I'm mainly focused on the transition of ink that I'm getting here, closer to the shadow. So I'm really not worrying about what's happening in the border area at all at the moment. I just found when I was going direct to paper, maybe because of the 3D quality of the embossing, that when I was going direct to paper, it was coming on here too heavy. So I thought I'd like to actually do that more with a brush. So I'm hoping that by laying down a bit of a base layer, when we go direct to paper, it'll be a lot more even. Okay, now let's grab our ink pad and start inking up over the flowers and inching into the card a little bit. I'm just going to check I haven't got any ink on my fingers from doing the shading. So I'm really wanting to push this right through the embossed areas to the card underneath. So I'm actually putting a little bit of pressure on. So you can see now the brushed area, and then we've got the stronger area where we're going direct to paper. But because I had that little bit of ink laid down first, the transition from one to the other isn't too strong. So shade a bit on, and then come back to those flowers and put a bit more pressure on. Because it's a pigment ink, you've got a little bit more blending time with it, but I have got a bit of a line there, so I'm just going to use my brush just to go over that. A dye ink would be much more likely to grab the card, and I wouldn't have this working time with it. So where I've got a bit of a line there, I can first shade it with a bit of lighter pressure with the ink pad, and then if it still needs a bit of work, I'll come in with the brush. So we want all this to be nice and soft, but we want the outer part to be really good coverage. Now you might ask, well, why have I embossed something 3D and now I'm colouring it all in? It's because I'm going to add another colour to it. This is just putting in a base colour. So we're actually going to be layering on this twice more, which is why it's important that this layer has the good coverage, because we've got two more techniques to pick up on those raised areas. Okay, so once that one's done, we'll get our Sahara sand, and this time do it with less pressure. And mainly just over the flowers and leaves. So I'm holding the pad fairly flat. So really, this time I don't want it going onto the card. And see this lovely graduation of colours that we're getting? A little bit trickier where you've got leaves coming right into the card. I've actually left them not quite so coloured because I didn't want to risk touching this ink pad to that part of the card. How pretty is that? So I'm now going to have a look with our shadow and see if I want to add some extra colour to him, and I'll do this with a coloured pencil. So we might come in and add, now I'm just going to give my hands a wipe, make sure I'm not got ink all over my hands where I don't want it. Okay, so let's come in and add some black to his tail. So because I've used the chalk ink, the pencils are going to go over it quite easily. So then where I want colour a little bit less, I'll just put a bit of black up that edge and then start fading off a little bit. Making it, I'm just sort of streaking it a bit to try and make it look a bit like hairs. And then I'll bring another colour, a lighter colour, back over it until we've got that fading in. And we'll do the same to his ears. So if I felt like I was feeling very clever with my pencils, I could actually ink him up, because again, he's just a shadow stamp, he's not an outline stamp, but I could stamp him in the chalk ink and then colour the whole lot with the coloured pencils. But I'm not feeling quite that masterful over my colouring abilities on a cat. So I'm just going to stick to ears and tail. Also too, I do find when you're working with coloured pencils that it's quite meditative, and you tend to stop talking and just start drifting away with what you're doing, which is not so great on a video. Yeah. Maybe just a little bit on the top of his head. Oh, now I've started doing more, haven't I? Yeah, I think you better start your chanting again, Matthew. Here we go. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to colour all of him in. It would just take too long. We'll leave that for another video. Okay, so that's just giving him some dark points. I might just add a little bit of dark, just to not all of the whiskers, but just a little bit of them.
Maybe the next one should be shadow with a mandala.
Oh, okay. Right. That's a good idea, Matthew. Okay, now let's grab our Dorland Wax Medium. And I'm going to, actually before I do this, I'm going to stamp our sentiment in here. So we've got the Happy Birthday. And I'm just going to see where the words are going to fit in amongst all that decoration. Okay, I'm going to stamp birthday first, and for this I do want my, do we go black? Yeah. Or do we go dark brown? Let's go dark brown. I've got the Jumbo Java here in the Versamagic. So I'm just going to ink up the second part of the stamp. Now I could, to be able to ink up part of a stamp, I could put some masking tape over the word that we don't want inked, or I can just ink up carefully, and then before I stamp it, just wipe over that letter and make sure there's no ink on it. Even wipe it over with the edge of my cleaning cloth, just making sure there's no ink on that other word. We'll get to him in a minute. Okay, so we're going to tuck birthday in there. Now we've got to give that a really good clean, because I don't want any of that word coming out when we're stamping the other half of the sentiment. So give it a really good clean, make sure there's no ink on there. Now we ink up the happy part of it. Let's just have a quick look where it's going to fit. Will it fit along the same line? I think it will. Or we could put it up a little bit higher. That might look nice. So ink up the happy. Make sure we get the word well and truly inked. And then check that we haven't got any ink onto the I'm going to keep going. I'll get around that. So, don't flick your stamp across the page and drop it on your cat. Okay. Now we look at the P of birthday and clean that off. Oh, stop laughing, Matthew. Well, that is funny. We'll put our happy up in here. Obviously, there's a bit more pencil colouring has to happen yet. Obviously. Okay, let's try.
You can barely see it, or at least not till I zoomed right in.
Oh dear. What a meanie. I'm going to put some fluffy bits there for the cat, and maybe we'll... Now, didn't I say I wasn't going to do a whole lot of pencil colouring? But here we go. So as well as some little circles, I'll also add in some lines to give it a bit of a fur feel. Colour in just very softly in some black as well, and then bring our beigey colour back in over the top of that. So now I'm doing circles. So Shadow's got a few little patches, so let's give him a black patch on this side as well, just to make it all look like it's supposed to be there. See, this is how creative us card makers can be, to get out of problems that we create. So he's a little patchy cat now. Okay, let's move on to our next technique. So this is using the Dorland Wax Medium and our 2 mica powders. So I'm just going to open up the Espresso and the Dusty Pink.
Did someone say coffee?
I don't like coffee, but I love this mica colour. So we've got a real goldy pink and a very bronzy gold brown. So I think they will work really nicely together. Okay, so with the Dorland Wax Medium, I just grab a little bit of that and rub it on some of the really highlighted parts of our 3D design. So we don't want to cover everything that the Sahara sand did. So I'm not pushing hard, I'm just trying to pick up the very edges of those petals and leaves. Now, before I go any further, I'll stop there and do those bits. So not the finger that's been in the wax, I'll use 2 other fingers on this hand. Just pick up a little bit of mica powder on my finger and then just rub that over those bits where we put the wax. And then with this finger I'll pick up a bit of the Espresso and we'll add some of that in as well. So it's just going to stick where the wax is. So it gives you a fabulous highlight. You just got to remember which finger you've put in which colour. And I don't know whether Matthew can get a close-up and see across the light what's happening, but it's just beautiful. So it just accentuates that 3D quality of the embossing folder. do the witch, tip it up and go side to side. Are we catching that shine? Now we need to go back for some more wax. It is a bit of a problem when we're doing something, I've noticed it with both photos and videos, both mine and other people's, that you do these beautiful shiny effects and it's very hard to actually get all that shine to show up on a video or a photo. It can be a little bit annoying because you look at it in real life and go, oh, that's gorgeous, but trying to actually get it so that everyone else can see what you've done. So I'm here trying to keep my finger quite flat. Oh, it's looking nice. Even without seeing the shine, you can see the difference with adding the extra colours on, with how much more it's bringing up the 3D-ness of the folder that we've used. So you can do this, of course, with just a normal embossing folder. It's just the 3D folders do showcase it much better. But you can still create great effects with your standard embossing folders as well. Okay, I'm just going to wipe my hands clean on my apron and just get a soft brush and just brush that off a bit, just so we're taking off any excess. Now you can spray this with a sealer, but I've actually found I don't feel that I need to most of the time. It just, with the wax there, it just seems to stay. But I am wondering, do we want to add some mica to our cat? Have we still got a bit more time, Matthew, for me to play? 23. Okay, let's try. We're going to put our card back in our stamp press. Check that he's still lining up in the same place. And let's stamp him this time with Versamark. I just feel we've got all this lovely shine happening around here, and now Shadow's looking a little bit plain. So, or you might like him looking very soft in the middle. So we could be about to totally ruin it, or it may look absolutely stunning. Okay, so let's get a small brush. And start with the dusty pink, and then I'll add some of the espresso in as well. Okay, we'll get a soft brush and just brush off excess. And he does look a bit more exciting now. So I'm going to move this forward onto the black so that, but I'll hold it up so that, and we'll move it from side to side so we can get a feel of that shine. Now, if I'd inked a couple of times with the Versamark, I probably could have covered the whole of him and put the mica over the whole lot, but I quite like that we've still got some of the inked areas and the highlights are more to the edge, but I do feel that now he matches the border a little bit better. So that's shadow with blending of ink colours with some coloured pencil work, and our border with the 3D embossing powder inked and then done with the wax and the mica powders. So there's a couple of different techniques thrown in there together to what I think is a lovely vintage looking card. Hopefully you enjoyed that one, and hopefully you'll have a bit of a go yourself. Having a play with our shadow would be really great to see all the different looks you can come up with. So we'll see you again next time for another video. Thanks for being with us today.